Hello everybody and good morning. Welcome to the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. So today we're going over Chapter 9, Teachability Expands Your Talent. So before we jump into that chapter, we're going to go ahead and invite some people onto here. Boop-doo. Alrighty. Okay, so teachability expands your talent. So talent is never going to be enough because when you're a highly talented person, you have a tough time with teachability. And why is that? Because talented people often think they know it all, and it makes it difficult for them to continually expand their talent. Teachability is not so much about competence and mental capacity as it is about the attitude. It's the desire to listen and learn and apply. And if you're not willing to do any of those things, you're really not going to continue growing, because even though people are talented at something, they think that's the time where they can slack off rather than push forward, which is why some people, even though they have really great talent in this, they end up not making it very far. So he has a couple stories here. We're going to go past that. So teachability truths. So consider the following truths about teaching. Number one is nothing is interesting if you're not interested. Never let days pass without looking at some perfect work of art, hearing some great piece of music, and reading in some great book. So, hold on here. Until you become interested in something, and sometimes people don't want to do anything that they're not interested in, but until you start doing the work, you're not going to be interested in whatever it is that you're doing. So when you're trying to build a team or sell some products, we work mostly with building teams in MLM, and that's what we mainly focus on, because until you would rather have 1% of 100 people's efforts than 100% of your own. And that's how you can build to great success. So it doesn't really come until you're actually doing the work, and you don't want to wait on the feeling to go do the work as well, because if you wait for the feeling of when you feel like doing something, you're never going to do it. That's why researching all these different people who have been successful in other businesses and in MLM, you want to go learn from those people regardless of what you think you know, because otherwise you're going to end up falling behind. Number two, successful people view learning differently from those who are unsuccessful. So a winner knows how much he still has to learn, even when he is considered an expert by others. A loser wants to be considered an expert by others before he has learned enough to know how little he actually knows. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And the more you learn, the more you're like, okay, well, now I have more of these questions. Where are the answers? And then you have to start searching for them and be like, who do I need to talk to? What books do I need to read? What audios do I need to listen to? And because you're going to find different scenarios where you're like, okay, this is how far that got me. Now what's the next step? What's the answer here? And it never stops. The more you grow, the more you find out you don't know. This was even true when we went through our doctorate when we became naturopathic doctors. And I was like, you know what? I know so much more now than the average person does. However, now I realize there's so much more that I don't know. And then I was like, okay, well, now I need to find out more. And the same applies to MLM and when you're building a team. Number 3, learning is meant to be a lifelong pursuit. And it never ends. You are always going to be growing. There's always going to be something that once you get to a certain goal and where you think you're going to be done, you're never going to be done. So every stage of life presents lessons to be learned, but we choose to be teachable and continue to learn them, or we can be closed-minded and stop growing, and the decision is ours. Number 4, talented people can be the toughest to teach. So one of the paradoxes of life is that the things that initially make up your success are rarely the things that keep you successful. And a lot of times they get very hard-headed. The people that are talented are very hard to teach because they want to close off their mind, because it's either I'm better than you or I know more than you, so why would I listen to you? So they continually will keep doing that. And that's what's going to hurt them in the long run. And sometimes it's judging based on their personality type too. How you bring a question to people or give advice to that person also makes a difference as well. Because if you go up to a D-type personality and you say, you have to do this, that person's going to be like, no, I don't. And a person with an S-type personality would be thankful and be like, oh, well, that was very nice of you to show that to me. But all depending on how you approach that person. And actually, that would be a very good book to go over at one point, the DISC personality profiling, because I know we do talk about it a lot, and it really does help, especially when picking out who you're talking to. If you figure out in the first 5 minutes of who you're talking to, it makes the conversation so much easier. Number 5, pride is the number one hindrance to teachability. So while envy is a deadly sin that comes from feelings of inferiority, the deadly sin of pride comes from the feelings of superiority. It creates an arrogance of success and inflated sense of self-worth, accompanied by the distorted perspective of reality. So such an attitude leads to a loss of desire to learn and unwillingness to change. It makes a person unteachable. So be careful with pride. So when it comes to pride, here are just a few things of negative effects that pride has when it comes to teachability. So pride closes our minds to new ideas. Excuse me. Teachability is the most fundamental form of willingness to open the minds of new ideas. Pride prevents that, because since pride gives you a sense of superiority, you look at other people and you're like, there's nothing that you can teach me. I don't want anything else that you have. There's nothing I can get from you. Pride closes our minds to feedback. Excuse me. So the process begins we look at feedback. The process begins with an idea, which becomes improved through the interaction of the team. But what also happens is that because of the input and feedback you receive, the next step is to improve that idea. So as long as you are willing to listen and embrace the feedback, it's not only improves whatever task you're working on, but it also improves you. Pride prevents us from admitting mistakes. And by not admitting mistakes, you are going to hurt the team and you're going to hurt yourself. Because if you mess up and you're not okay with actually going to, like, say if it's a person on the team that you messed up with, or you didn't follow through with something, or it just wasn't done in the right order, not going up to people and telling them, hey, you know what? I saw the mistake that I made. I just want to say I'm sorry, and this is how we're gonna fix it in the future. If you're not willing to do that, what it ends up doing is people end up not trusting you, and they don't want to work with you, because how you do anything is how you do everything, and people don't want to work with somebody that they don't trust and don't think is going to follow through with what they say they're going to do. Pride keeps us from making needed changes, because again, they think that they're always right and that their way is the right way, and won't make the necessary changes if the changes are needed. How to overcome pride if it's a problem for you. So the first one is recognize and admit your pride. It is very hard for somebody who is proud to admit that they are proud, because they're like, oh, that's not me, because they have this misconception to thinking that they're perfect and that they don't need any help. And I actually ran into somebody when we went to a networking event that was like this. We were sitting down, we were at a round table, and we were doing different exercises at each table. And this one guy was like, we were talking about what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, and we were going to go around the table and talk about it. And we got to this one man, and he's like, I don't have any weaknesses. I have no problems. I haven't dealt with anything like that. And all I can think of, I didn't say anything out loud, but like everybody at the table just kind of gave him that look. And I was like, well, actually, you do have one weakness, is that you won't admit that you have any weaknesses. I'm like, we're all human, but he had a very he was very proud. He's just like, it's good to have confidence. I think that's where people kind of get lost sometimes, when they confuse confidence with pride. And there's a very fine line, and you got to know where that line is, because instead of coming across as confident, you come across as proud, and people don't feel comfortable with that, because it shows it's giving us off a superiority over everybody else, and you don't want to do that, because you want people to feel comfortable with you. Number 2, express gratitude often. So, and that lies in a problem with when you have a selfish attitude. People, they're not grateful because they never think that they get as much as they deserve, and expressing gratitude continuously helps you break that kind of pride. Look for different things that people are doing and doing well, and tell those people, look, you're doing a great job at this. I notice that you're showing up every single week. I notice that you show up early and you help set up the chairs. That little bit is going to help you focus on the positive, and it's going to also help you build those relationships. Number 3, laugh at yourself. Blessed are they that laugh at themselves, for they shall never cease to be entertained. It's okay to laugh at yourself. We all make mistakes. There are times where I completely mess up a presentation, and I'm like, you know what? I don't even know where the heck that came from. Like, I'm like, apparently my mouth isn't working today. Joke with people and point out any of the flaws, and people are more likely to be like, oh, okay. And also, people relate to flaws more than they do if you look completely perfect. So it's okay if you're not perfect all the time, because we all mess up on stuff. Let's see. So how do you pursue teachability? Number 1, learn to listen. There's a reason why we have 2 ears and only one mouth. You can learn something from everybody, even if you think you already know everything. Just listen. Just listen, because you'll be surprised at what you'll be able to pick up from people. Number 2, understand learning is a process. It's not something, if there is a process to learning. So when excuse me. So how the process usually works is step 1, you want to act. Number 2, look for the mistakes and evaluate. Search for a way to do it better and go back to step 1. And it's a cycle where continuously keeps turning. Excuse me, hold on, need a drink of coffee. There we go. Number 3, look for a plan and teachable look for a plan and plan teachable moments. So looking for different opportunities. John does this very well. Whenever he sees an article or talks to somebody where he gets a story, he always keeps it somewhere where he can go find it later. And keeping those stories, because when you're sitting down with people or when you're talking with people on your team, it's good to have all these stories put away in different lessons, because people will relate better and learn the lesson better if there is a story attached to it. It helps people remember because it sets an emotion. When you attach an emotion to what you're teaching, people will remember it because they'll remember how it made them feel. So keeping those little stories, and a lot of times I will do this too, like if I find an article, I'm like, oh, that's a really great article, I need to save that. And actually, we save everything on our Gmail. Whenever I find something, I'll actually type it in as an email and then put notes in the subject, and like notes, leadership quote, or I'll leave some type of little note on it, and then I send it to myself on email. That way, if I ever need to go back and find it, I could just type it into my search bar and it'll bring it right up for me. It's a really cool trick. Number 4, make your teachable moments count. So, unfortunately, many people feel after potentially, hold on, let's see. Sorry about that, there's a lot of stuff here. Make your teachable moments count. So we actually went to a conference over the weekend for our company, and we took notes, we listened to the speakers, and you always want to take notes whenever you go to a convention, because you're not going to learn anything unless you write it down. And also, it's so long, usually you'll forget. So you want to take your notes. But John actually had a really cool exercise where he uses codes to mark things that he needs to go back to. So he uses a T to put next to his notes to indicate what he needs to what he needs sometimes to think on about that point that that speaker talked about. Number C indicates something you need to change, something you personally need to change, like, oh, that's something I need to work on, we need to go back to that. A smiley face means that you're doing this perfectly well. An A indicates something you need to apply, and an S means you need to share this information with somebody else. So after the conference, you almost need to go back and create a to-do list of what is, how do you need to apply these notes? Because it's one thing to listen and know the knowledge, but unless you apply the knowledge, you're never going to get anywhere, because knowledge is only useful when it's applied. So, and actually, I'm going to start using that. That was a great idea. I wish I read this chapter right before the conference. That would have been awesome. But now I know for the next one. Number 5, ask yourself, am I really teachable? So this takes a moment where you have to be very honest with yourself and ask, like, am I open to people giving me advice? Like, do I come off as open, or do I get a little standoffish? And also, who is giving me? And is it based on the person? Is it somebody I respect, or is it somebody I don't respect? Is it somebody who's doing the work or somebody who's not doing the work? If it's certain people where I know I'm like, okay, well, the reason I'm not taking this person's advice is because they really don't they don't follow through with anything that they do very well. So that's a person that you wouldn't take advice from anyway. But if you're taking advice from leadership and people who are running successful businesses and are successful in MLM, if you're not taking that person's advice, you're just being foolish. But knowing the difference of different people that you can learn from, because there are some people where you can listen to them, be polite, because you don't want to be rude, but there are just some people you don't want to take advice from. But it's always okay to listen. but having the teachability of being open-minded, so if somebody does bring a good idea to you, that you can actually apply it. Because every once in a while when we sit down with people and we're talking about what we're building, what's going on, every once in a while somebody comes up with a great idea, and it's like, hey, what do you think about maybe applying this? And sometimes it comes from the most unlikely person. So you don't want to be completely closed off to everybody. You want to consider it, but just be careful of what advice you're taking. And that's pretty much it. So for this chapter, the biggest thing that I got is when it comes to teachability, it's more, you have to watch how you, you really just have to watch your attitude when it comes to teachability, because your attitude will reflect everything that you do, and whatever you're thinking on the inside, it's going to reflect outside. So having a pride will block everything, and having that superiority over everybody else will actually hurt you more than help you, which a lot of people confuse pride with being strong, because they're like, oh, well, it's confidence. And I'm like, no, confidence is where you're completely comfortable and you can listen and you can work with people. Like, because there's a very big difference between pride and goodness, why did the word just leave me? Confidence, yes. Thank you. Oh my word, need to finish my coffee today. But there's a very large difference between pride and confidence. You just need to be able to narrow down and understand the difference between the two, and your actions of where are you falling into a category. A great exercise to do for this, I like to put everything on paper, so to be able to judge whether or not it's pride or confidence, I like to put a line down the middle, write them, and say what am I doing when people are coming up to me, when somebody comes up to me and they're talking to me to give advice, where am I at on the chart? Because confident people are comfortable and they're okay with taking advice, and they handle things very differently compared to a proud person. So with that is basically what I have for today. Do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, you covered it.
Cool. All right. Well, tomorrow is chapter 10, and actually that will be on Bess's page tomorrow since it is Wednesday. So character protects your talent, and that will be on Bess McCarty's page. I'm sure she's in the comments here somewhere. So with that, we will see you guys Thursday, but you'll see Bess tomorrow, and have a wonderful day.